Got a Sony CCD FX270E, which is a European PAL camera, in to take a look at it. And the reason I'm looking at this is because it's a PAL camera. I was all set to sell the fella one of my cameras I've got so he could transfer his tapes, and he showed me his old camera, and then we realized, wait a minute, this isn't going to work. Your tapes are in PAL. So let's take a look at the camera and see what the problem is, and maybe we can get it going. Maybe it's not that serious. So let's take a look and see what we got. Maybe we can get this one running. This time I have a Sony CCD FX270E. This is a European camera. And the only reason I've got this in here is because the fellow that owns it has some tapes he was wanting to transfer, and he says it's not working. And initially I didn't know it was a PAL camera until I was going to do a deal with him. I was going to rent him a camera that I had so he could transfer his tapes, and he was going to give me this one as part of as the rental. And then when he pulled this out of the bag, he said, well, hold on a second, this is the PAL camera. So my camera's not going to play your tapes anyway, so maybe we should look at this and see whether I can get it going. So the only thing I'm interested in is getting this thing to play tapes. And I do have a PAL camera, so I can make test recordings and play them back on this. But that's the only thing I'm interested in, is whether this will play a tape. And we're going to try to get this one running. This is an A mechanism on this camera. Here's the power adapter that goes on the back. If I turn it on, what do I get? Do I get a picture? I don't see anything on here. Viewfinder is completely dead. The light is lighting up on the back here for the power adapter, but the camera's not. Oh, now it did. That time it worked. Maybe it's just not making a good connection. Camera's not turning on itself. Clean up those contacts first on the back of the adapter. Okay, that has got the player working. What about the camera section? I think the camera turns on at all. So maybe the switch down the side here is also broken because the camera's not turning on, but I don't care. All I care about is, does the player turn on? And I had a picture on it there a minute ago. I'm going to try my adapter. Well, okay, it still doesn't turn on. It turned on once there for a second. Now it's on. We'll try loading a tape. This is an NTSC tape, so I don't expect anything to play on it. I just want to see what it does. And it doesn't do anything. It doesn't spin the heads. It just ejects the cassette again. So that gives me a place to start, but it will close when there's no tape. Now, what happens when you first close down the tape, when there's a cassette in place, is it attempts to operate the capstan motor and the drum motor to make sure that they can spin. As you can see, the capstan motor does turn because the pendulum gear is moving. It does that to make sure that the capstan motor can turn, otherwise it could end up eating the tape. When you close the cassette without a tape in it, it knows that there's no tape and it doesn't try to operate it. When you close it with a tape in place, the end sensors detect that there's no light shining through. It tries to start the motors up. In this case, it's not. Trying to give the motors a chance to start, they're not starting, and it's kicking the tape. Otherwise, what would happen is if it loaded the tape and the motors weren't working, when it ejected, you'd end up with tape hanging out of the end of the cassette. It would eat the tape. So we have a problem here where the motors aren't starting. I'll have to pull the unit apart and see if we can figure out why it's not working. Could be capacitors, could be edge connectors on this one. This is certainly one of the models that was definitely affected by the edge connector issue. In fact, this is the model that started on, was the A chassis. Then they went to the B chassis after this. We'll grab our trusty service mat. That way I can keep all the screws organized. Been a long time since I've been into one of these cameras. I say that because when the capacitor plague hit in the 90s there, and these cameras came in that were symptomatic of caps that were bad, they were just condemned on the spot, and the customer bought a new camera. So a lot of them went right into the bin. When I say a long time, I mean probably 30 years. Looks like somebody popped that off before and ripped it. And they soldered it down right to the board and stuck some tape over it. That's what you call it when you have an oops, when you're disassembling something and you don't disassemble it right. You rip the connector off the board. I can already see the problem. Can you? Staring me right in the face. That's a problem on these ones. And there's about 65 caps in this unit. Little mounting tab was fallen off from something. I think it goes in down here on this side. They use these little metal clamps to clamp it together. As you see, this is full of surface mounted caps. These ones were really bad for those, and there's a good chance that's where the fault is, and it's not going to be repairable because he won't spend the kind of money that will be required to do the board on one of these, because every single one of these needs to be replaced. They're all going to be bad. I just want to see why it's not operating the motors. And a lot of times it's these ribbon connectors, or not ribbon, but the, well, this is ribbon, but the it's the edge connectors that go bad where the motors plug in. That's quite often what is causing the problem. So say on this unit here, if I can make this thing play back, that's all that we're concerned about, because he's got a couple, he's got 2 tapes, and I even offered to transfer his tapes for him, but he doesn't want me to transfer his tapes because he doesn't want me to see what might be on the tapes. So I'm going to leave it at that. And it's not like I care. I don't sit and watch people's tapes when I'm transferring them. In fact, I hate it when I have to sit down and watch a tape. Like if I have a tape that clogs the heads every 5 minutes and I got to watch it because the heads keep clogging up, that drives me crazy. I want to just put the tape in, hit play, and walk away, and come back in 2 hours when it's done. As long as there's nothing illegal on them, I don't care. And I think you know what I'm getting at there. See, quite often what happens is connections go bad between these connectors and either the mode switches down here, the switches, and or the drum motor and the capstan motor. The connections go bad and then things don't work. couple caps down here. I think these are in the motor drive circuit too. Here, these ones. I think that's what those are, but I could be wrong. It's been a while. This is the capstan motor ribbon, I think, and the drum motor is one of these other ones. I'm just going to reseat them first, and then power it up and see if it will thread a tape. Well, I'm at it here. Here's my little Heathkit clock that I repaired there the other day, and we're going to go up and look at the time from the internet,
check the fuses
from
on the back as well,
cellular network to show that it is actually keeping perfect time. There's the time that is displayed from my BlackBerry, which pulls the time from the cellular network, which is from GPS. And as you can see, it is keeping perfect time. It was stopping every few seconds. So if you got one of those clocks, check the connection going in for the 60 hertz. I thought maybe it was going to be the chip had failed, but apparently it's working. Let's see. That's just an update for you guys. Going to plug in the side panel here because the switch is on here, right? So I'm going to plug this one in, but then I should be able to plug in the camera and see if the motors will turn and load the tape. I got to put this one on because the eject is on this. Great, Sony. Great design. Okay, now I should be able to power the camera up and open it. And you'll see whether, when I load a tape, whether it attempts to thread. And it still does not attempt to thread. Therefore, we have capacitor problems on this one. Normally when you close it down, what happens is it blocks the light from the end sensors, and that will trigger the loading cycle. That's how it knows there's a tape in it. Now we know the capstan motor works. It's a drum motor problem, you see, because when I close it, watch, the capstan motor will actually go when it tries to eject. So it's not detecting the drum. What happens if I close this down and I spin the drum motor? Nothing, because it actually has to spin up to speed, and I'm not spinning it to speed, so it's still going to open. Still won't accept it. But we know the capstan motor can turn. I think it's supposed to kick it both ways, though. If I remember correctly, it goes one and the other. That was, I didn't have my finger in the right place to block the light. That's why it loaded, because it saw that there was no tape. This is also a way to clean your mode switch on these things. Just open and close them several times, because that operates the mechanism which will spin the mode switch, which is right down here on that cam gear. Looks like this edge connector someone damaged and repaired it. It's got tape on it. Looks like that was repaired in the past as well. Yep. Yep, someone tore that connector and tried to fix it. And you wonder why things aren't working. I'm going to pop this board down. I want to look in behind here. I want to look at the drum connection on the board. It should swing out. Now the connection down here for the drum, you see the drum motor is here. And that was broken too. Someone just stuffed that clip back on. Look at the motor, see? Someone just shoved that clip back on there to hold it together. Look at the motor here. This trace is damaged. According to the date code on the chassis, September 16th, 1993 was when this camera was manufactured. They started failing in numbers around 97, 98. Somebody just brutalized this camera. I can't believe it. Wherever it was serviced before. See, this clip is broken. This goes underneath and squeezes this cable up against the back side of the contacts on here. Try to put this piece back together first. This is brutal, the way that some people just treat these connectors. Obviously, whoever worked on this thing wasn't really sure what they were doing. There's no excuse for ripping the copper off of here, trying to put a connector on or remove it, or breaking the tab off on one side. These connectors come off fairly easy, but we'll see whether this one will work. I don't think that's the problem. I'm pretty sure the problem on this is probably it's going to be caps, because these cameras were just loaded with caps. When they started failing in mass, we just condemned every last one of these cameras that were out there. People that had them just, nope, this is not worth fixing, and people walked away from them. You know, this is going back to the 90s, this camera, right? So people just walked away from these cameras because they were just getting kind of long. Well, they weren't even that long in the tooth. They were maybe only 5 years old at the time. And the biggest problem with these ones were these edge connectors. You had to take them apart and reseat them like I've just done, and put the reseat the connector. That was the biggest problem with these ones. And then the cap started to go. But once the cap started to fail on these units, and they say there's lots of them. There's a few on this board. Most of them are these ones here. Once they start to go bad, it's basically a death sentence for these cameras. And go bad they did. Say by about 1997-98, we were getting maybe 5 or 6 cameras a weekend for service, and they were all being pitched and replaced because every single one of them had caps that were leaking. That's how bad it was. All the Sony F and V series and the FX series and the majority of the Canon cameras, they were just all bad. And if I remember the bulletin, they were Sanyo capacitors that were being used. And of course, all the Sanyo cameras, they were bad as well. But they bought all these caps from Sanyo. It's like they didn't learn anything from the 1980s with all the bad caps in the Betamax machines. And they went back and did it again for the cameras. Sony, you'd never learn sometimes. That's when it's just the head preamp. This is the rotary transformer on the bottom here. this plugs into. This actually unplugs too. There's a second plug on there as well that can pull out, but I don't think I need to pull that out. Just pull it back a bit, that just scrapes the contacts. That's generally all we ever did. This one's a signal board, Y process and PAL color, and the audio is over here, chroma process. When these caps go bad, you get a bad picture, and they do fail. Got a friend that's got an old VX3. I'm trying to get it out, trying to get it from him. Say, hey, if you want to get rid of your VX3, just give it to me. But he seems to think it's worth money. I keep explaining to him it's not worth anything. But he doesn't use it. He hasn't used it for probably 30 years. I would like it myself just as a collector piece, because I used to have one. Not that I would ever use it, but just as a piece for my little Sony museum.
And it's not that I collect everything. I only try to collect the models that I had and used and sold, just for display.
But he seems to think it's worth $500. I asked him what drugs he's smoking.
Now, late model high 8 cameras are actually worth a few dollars, and I've sold several for a couple $100 each easily. But that's from the era after the capacitors. The ones from this era, they're worth nothing. And the VX3 is from this era.
And I said to him, if you can find some sucker to pay you $500 for it, then be my guest. Nope. There's a couple little caps down there on the drum motor. Let's just check them where the drum plugs in on that bottom board. You notice how I remove these, right? You try to keep them straight and just pull them straight out. This is the connector here that the drum motor is powered up with. And we follow the traces back. The traces come from there, go through the board onto this side, and then go up into this IC here. These are a couple caps that could be problematic and cause the drum motor not to work. So we'll check these ones, these three here. They could cause the drum motor not to rotate. So let's check them. Okay, there's one there. This one is measuring 1 microfarad at 1 k ohm. I think it's open. That one's measuring 666 nanofarads. I would say that one's bad as well. How about this one here? That one's measuring as a diode. That one's completely open. I mean, they're all going to be bad. You change one and you got a whole bunch else that are also going to be bad on here. And how bad they are will determine what the video looks like. See, that one's open. That one's open. That one's open. Every single one of these caps is going to be bad. 17 microfarads. 0.03. I mean, here's a 220. What's the 220 going to measure? It's open too. You see, every single one of these caps needs to be replaced. And to do that on something like this, you're talking a couple $100 minimum because of the labor required to do it. I don't know if I change a couple of these, whether that will make the motor spin, and then what? Okay, it loads a tape. Is it going to play a tape? Probably not. Not with these all in the shape that they are. And for the 2 PAL tapes the guy's got, I mean, I charge a little bit more to do PAL tapes than I do NTSC, but I mean, the cost to transfer his tapes, because he's only got 2 tapes, the cost to transfer his tapes over to digital would be, probably around $50. And I couldn't repair the camera I couldn't do this camera probably for $200 to change all these parts.
and then you got a camera that works. I mean, if they've leaked into the board itself could have sustained damage. We don't know whether they've leaked into the board. I do know that the camera does not turn on, and I don't know whether that's just because of failed caps or whether it's because the switch is bad, because in the camera mode it doesn't light up. The viewfinder doesn't light up or anything when you put it in camera mode. So I guess at this point what I got to do is I got to get a hold of the fellow and let him know, that this thing's got tons of caps that are bad. There's probably 65 capacitors on this that need to be changed, and it's just not something that you're going to do. I mean, I can continue to test. That's the nice thing about this little probe meter here, is that I can verify that they're bad. Yeah, that was 17 nanofarads. That's bad. 1.3 nanofarads. That's bad. They're all open. Every single one of these is open. And this will measure in circuit. You might not get quite a correct reading, but this is measuring them as being open. 9.6 mega ohms across the terminals. There's nothing being passed through here at all. And that's on the 1 kilohertz setting. If I bump it up to 10 kilohertz, 1.4 microfarads, right? Yeah, this one here I think is a lost cause. Just for the hell of it, I'm going to change the 3 that are on the little servo board and see whether that will make the motor spin, and see how bad the picture is coming off of this thing, if it can even get a picture. And we'll see that. It's not worth fixing even at this point, but we'll see if I can get the thing to deliver anything. I doubt it's going to do anything, but we'll try. We'll just try these 3 here and see what happens. I should have enough clearance to be able to stuff these little caps in here. It ain't pretty, but we want to see if it works. So these are 10 microfarad. Originals were 16 volt. These are 25. They won't be staying in here. If it doesn't fix it, I'll pull them back and put them back into my stock. So I got everything plugged back in. Will the drum motor spin this time? No, still not spinning. So there's more caps than that are bad on it. It could even be the drive IC. It could be that motor too that's at fault, because that drum motor should start to spin. But could be a bad motor, drive IC, or just some of the other caps on the board are shot. I mean, every single one of them is bad on here, so I'm going to leave it at that. This is just one that's it's not worth repairing, as the saying goes. So I'm going to pull my new parts out and throw this back together and contact the owner and let him know that he's going to have to find another way to get his 2 tapes put onto digital. If he doesn't want someone else to do it, then I guess he'll be SOL, or he'll have to try to find a PAL camera that works. And you think finding a good working NTSC camera on this side of the world is hard, try finding a PAL camera around here that works.
Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.